There was a woman who lived in a world that was full of rules. Every person around her seemed to fit into those rules perfectly. They had the right clothes, the right hair, and even the right way of speaking. They didn't seem to worry about anything, and everyone loved them. But the woman felt different. She wasn't like them. No matter how much she tried, she couldn't fit in. She didn't look the way they did. Her body was different, her skin was different, and her smile didn't look like theirs. Every time she walked into a room, it felt like everyone noticed her differences. They would stare, whisper, and laugh. She tried to change herself in little ways, buying new clothes, fixing her hair, but it never seemed enough. One night, sitting alone in her room, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. "Why can't I be like them?" she whispered to herself. The thought swirled in her mind, growing louder and louder until they became a desperate plea. She wanted to be accepted. She wanted to be loved. But most of all, she wanted to stop feeling like she was always the odd one out. That's when she decided to do something that would change her forever. She would change herself. Not just the small things, but everything. She would make herself the way others wanted her to be. The next day, the woman found herself standing in front of an old, mysterious shop in the corner of the street. She had passed it many times before, never giving it much thought. But today, something about it felt different. The sign read, "Change your shape, change your life." She stepped inside, her heart beating fast. The air inside was thick with the smell of incense, and the walls were lined with strange jars filled with colorful powders and glowing liquids. An old woman with silver hair looked at her from behind a counter. Her eyes were deep, almost as if they could see right into the woman's heart. "I know why you're here," the old woman said in a soft voice, as if she had been waiting for her. "You want to change. To fit in. To be loved." The woman nodded, her throat tight. She didn't have to explain herself. The old woman already understood. Without another word, the woman was led into the back room. On the table lay a strange, glowing substance. "This will help you become what you want," the old woman said. "Just trust me." The woman hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. She wanted to fit in. She wanted to belong. As the substance touched her skin, a strange feeling washed over her. It was like her very bones were shifting, changing. She could feel herself becoming different, becoming someone else. Her body morphed and stretched, the shape of her face changing, becoming smoother, more symmetrical. Her skin lightened and became soft, just like the people she had always envied. The transformation was so powerful that she couldn't even recognize herself in the mirror anymore. At first, when the woman looked in the mirror, she didn't believe it. The reflection staring back at her was someone she had never seen before. Her face was symmetrical, her hair long and straight, her skin smooth and glowing. Her body was slender, just like the women she had always admired. She felt perfect. For the first time, when she walked into a room, people didn't stare at her with curiosity or pity. They stared with admiration. They smiled at her. They greeted her with warmth. She was finally accepted. The woman felt a thrill in her chest, a happiness that she had never known before. People complimented her constantly, telling her how beautiful she was, how perfect she looked. The loneliness that had followed her for so long began to fade away. She started to believe that maybe this transformation was the best thing that had ever happened to her. She went out more, made new friends, and even met a man who admired her beauty. He looked at her like she was a treasure, something rare and precious. She felt proud of herself for finally achieving everything she had ever wanted. But as time went on, something started to feel strange. She didn't feel like her anymore. She couldn't remember the last time she laughed at something simple or felt truly happy without needing someone else's approval. As the weeks passed, the woman's transformation began to take a toll. She spent hours each day maintaining her new look. She couldn't let a single hair be out of place, and she had to make sure her skin always looked flawless. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw the version of herself that everyone admired, but she also saw the person she was losing. The laughter that once came so easily now felt forced, and the joy of being admired started to fade. People noticed her beauty, but no one seemed to care about the real her, the woman behind the perfect exterior. One day, while she was out shopping, she saw a group of women laughing and chatting with each other. They looked so natural, so comfortable in their own skin. She wished she could join them, but as she walked closer, one of them turned to her and smiled. "You look beautiful," the woman said, her voice sweet. But there was something in her eyes, something that made the woman realize she wasn't seen for who she truly was. The woman's heart sank. She had changed everything about herself to be accepted, but now, she wondered if anyone would ever accept the real her again. One evening, as the woman sat alone in her room, she looked at her reflection again. She could see the beauty that everyone else saw, the perfect features, the flawless skin, the graceful figure. But now, it didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like a mask, something she had put on to be loved. She had lost herself in the process of becoming someone else. The more she tried to hold on to this perfect version of herself, the emptier she felt inside. She thought about the woman she had been before, the one who didn't fit in but was still herself. She missed that woman. The one who laughed with her friends, who didn't need anyone's approval to feel good about herself. The woman who was enough, just as she was. Tears filled her eyes as she realized what she had given up. In her pursuit of perfection, she had lost the most important thing, herself. The woman couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. No matter how many compliments she received, no matter how many doors opened for her because of her new appearance, she felt as if she was trapped inside someone else's skin. The mirror, which once reflected the woman she had longed to be, now only showed a stranger. She spent hours staring at her face, wondering when she had lost the ability to recognize herself. Her new friends, the people who adored her beauty, began to feel distant. Conversations felt shallow, like they were only scratching the surface. Nobody cared about her thoughts, her dreams, or the stories that shaped her. All they cared about was how she looked. She was admired, yes, but no one truly saw her. One night, after another evening of forced laughter and polite conversations at a gathering, she slipped away unnoticed. She walked through the quiet streets, the sound of her heels echoing in the empty night air. The city, with its bright lights and busy streets, felt colder than ever. It was as if the whole world had become a stage, and she was just a performer playing a role that didn't belong to her. She stopped in front of a small park, a place she used to visit when she was younger. She remembered the old bench beneath the large oak tree where she would sit and watch the stars. It was there, under that very tree, that she had felt truly herself. The woman sat down, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, allowing the familiar sounds of nature to wash over her. The sound of rustling leaves, the chirping of crickets, the soft hum of the world around her. For the first time in weeks, she felt at peace. The weight of the world, the pressure to maintain her new image, seemed to lift just a little. She wondered if she could ever find her way back to that simpler version of herself. The woman who didn't need to change to be loved. The following day, the woman found herself wandering through the streets of her childhood neighborhood. She hadn't been back in years. The small cafe where she and her old friends used to sit, the bookstore with its dusty shelves, and the park where she had once felt free, they were all just as she remembered. But now, everything felt different. As she walked through the familiar streets, the woman couldn't help but feel like she no longer belonged. She had changed so much, both on the outside and on the inside. She passed by the old cafe and decided, almost without thinking, to go inside. The bell on the door jingled as she entered, and a warm, familiar scent of coffee filled the air. The place hadn't changed a bit. Old pictures hung on the walls, and the wooden tables looked as though they had stories to tell. The barista behind the counter smiled at her. "Long time no see," he said, his voice full of recognition. It took her a moment, but then it clicked. He was the same barista who used to make her coffee back when she was younger, before the transformation. He looked at her now, his eyes wide with surprise. "You look different," he said gently, as if unsure how to respond to the change. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile she had learned to wear to mask the discomfort inside. "Yeah, a lot has changed," she replied, her voice hollow. She ordered her usual drink, a cappuccino, and sat at a corner table, feeling the weight of the past pressing on her chest. As she sipped her coffee, she looked around the cafe. The old paintings, the cracked windows, everything here seemed unchanged. But she felt so far removed from this place now. It was as if she had lived another life, a different life, one where this small cafe didn't matter anymore. Her thoughts were interrupted when a voice called from the door. "Is that you, Maya?" The woman turned and saw an old friend, someone she hadn't seen in years. Maya's face lit up as she saw her. "Wow, you look incredible," Maya said, stepping closer. But something in her eyes made the woman's heart ache. Maya didn't recognize the woman who sat before her. She only saw the mask, the perfect version that she had created. For a moment, the woman felt the need to explain, to say, "This isn't really me." But she couldn't bring herself to speak the words. What was the point? After all, she had chosen this path. She had chosen to become someone else to gain love and acceptance. And now, she had to live with the consequences. Days turned into weeks, and the woman continued to live in her new reality. The compliments kept coming, the invitations never stopped, but the emptiness inside her only grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Every time she looked at herself in the mirror, the woman she saw no longer felt like the woman she wanted to be. She wasn't happy. She wasn't whole. One evening, as she was getting ready for another social event, the woman paused. She stood in front of the mirror, looking at her flawless reflection. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup impeccable, her body the picture of symmetry. But inside, she felt like a stranger. She wasn't sure who she had become anymore. Her hands shook as she touched her face, tracing the lines that had been altered. She could still feel traces of the woman she had been before, the one who had struggled to fit in, who had felt so different. But now, that version of herself felt like a dream, a distant memory. She had spent so much time trying to be accepted, trying to meet everyone else's expectations, that she had lost sight of her true self. The woman sank down on the edge of her bed, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. She had wanted to be loved, but at what cost? What had she lost along the way? Was it too late to go back? Could she ever reclaim the woman she once was? The woman knew deep down that she had reached a crossroads. She couldn't continue living in a version of herself that didn't feel true anymore. The question was, what would she do now? Could she walk away from the life she had built, from the acceptance she had fought for, and find her way back to who she truly was? Or was the price of perfection too high to pay? As the days passed, the woman found herself more and more drawn to the quiet corners of her past. The places where she once felt at peace. The park, the cafe, the old street of her childhood, everything was still there, untouched by time. But somehow, it all felt so far away, like a dream that slipped through her fingers whenever she tried to grasp it. The life she had built in her quest for acceptance had become a cage. The shiny exterior, the compliments, the invitations, it all felt empty now. One evening, she found herself standing in front of her childhood home, the house where she had grown up. It looked smaller than she remembered, its paint peeling in places, the garden overgrown with weeds. But the memories were still there, laughter in the kitchen, her mother's voice calling her inside, the smell of fresh-baked cookies. This place held everything she used to be, the person she once was before the transformation. She hesitated at the front gate. Her hand trembled as she reached out to open it. She hadn't been back here in years, and now it felt like a door to a life she had long abandoned. But something inside her urged her to go in. Something deep within her heart pulled her forward. Maybe, just maybe, she could find the answers she had been searching for. The moment she stepped into the yard, the air seemed to change. It felt familiar and safe, like a long-lost embrace. She walked slowly toward the front door, her steps hesitant but determined. When she knocked, there was no answer. For a moment, she thought about leaving, but then the door creaked open. An elderly woman stood in the doorway, her grandmother, the one person who had always loved her for who she truly was. Her grandmother's eyes softened when she saw her. "Maya, my dear, come in. It's been far too long." The woman, Maya, felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't heard her grandmother call her that in so long. It felt like a piece of her old self had just clicked back into place. Maya sat at the kitchen table, the same old table she had sat at many times as a child. Her grandmother placed a cup of tea in front of her, and for a while, they sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only old friends or family can share. Maya's eyes wandered over the kitchen. Everything was the same. The wooden chairs, the vintage teapot, the family pictures on the wall. It was like stepping back in time. But the quiet comfort didn't last long. Maya's grandmother, with a knowing look, broke the silence. "You've changed, Maya," she said gently. "I can see it. You're not the girl who used to run around in the garden, who laughed so freely, who wasn't afraid to be herself. What happened to you?" Maya didn't know how to answer. She had always been the quiet, self-conscious girl. But she had never been as lost as she felt now. The transformation, the desire to fit in, had started out as something small, a wish to be accepted. But it had grown into something bigger, something she couldn't control. I thought if I changed, if I became someone more like the others, I would be happy, Maya confessed, her voice breaking. "I thought I would finally feel loved, finally feel good enough. But now I don't know who I am anymore." Her grandmother listened carefully, her eyes filled with compassion. "Maya, my dear, you are enough. You've always been enough. You don't need to change to be loved. The world will love you for your true self, not for the person you pretend to be." Maya's heart ached as her grandmother's words sank in. She realized that in her quest for acceptance, she had lost something much more important, herself. The real her, the person she had once been, was waiting for her to remember. It wasn't too late to reclaim that part of herself. It was never too late. "Grandma," Maya whispered, "I want to go back. I want to be me again." Her grandmother smiled softly. "Then take the first step, my dear. It's always been inside you. You just have to listen." Over the next few weeks, Maya made small but powerful changes in her life. She stopped obsessing over her appearance, stopped checking the mirror every few minutes to make sure she still looked perfect. She stopped chasing after the approval of others, and slowly, she began to reconnect with the parts of herself she had left behind. Maya started going for long walks in the park again, just like she used to when she was younger. She allowed herself to feel the wind in her hair, to enjoy the sound of the birds singing, and the feel of the grass beneath her feet. She met with old friends, not to impress them with her new look, but to just be with them, to laugh and talk about old memories. Slowly but surely, Maya began to feel lighter, more at ease with who she was. She also began to distance herself from the people and places that had encouraged her transformation. The world of glittering parties and superficial compliments no longer felt like home. Maya found herself craving something more, something deeper. She wanted to be surrounded by people who saw her for who she truly was, not for the image she had created. One evening, while out on a walk, she bumped into an old friend from high school. It had been years since they had spoken, and Maya had almost forgotten what it felt like to talk to someone who didn't judge her by her appearance. "Hey, Maya," her friend called out, smiling brightly. "You look different. In a good way, I mean." Maya smiled back, but this time, it wasn't the first smile she had worn for so long. It was real. "I guess I'm just being myself again," she said softly. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in ages: peace. She had taken the first step toward healing, and though the journey ahead would still have challenges, she now knew that the most important thing was to never lose sight of who she really was. Maya's journey wasn't over. It would take time to fully reclaim herself, to heal from the wounds that came with changing who she was to fit the expectations of others. But now, she was no longer afraid to be herself. She knew that she didn't need to change to be loved, that she didn't have to sacrifice her true self for the approval of others. Maya learned that true beauty wasn't in the perfection of her features, but in the authenticity of her spirit. She didn't need to fit in to be accepted, she just needed to be her. And as she embraced her true self, the world around her began to change. People noticed the light in her eyes, the warmth in her smile, and the confidence in the way she carried herself. She didn't have to try anymore. She was simply Maya, and that was more than enough. The journey to rediscover herself had been hard, but it was also the most freeing thing she had ever done. And as Maya stood at the edge of the path that led her forward, she smiled, knowing that the best part of her life was yet to come. As Maya continued to embrace her true self, she began to notice how much her life had changed, in both subtle and profound ways. The pressure to conform to others' expectations melted away, and for the first time in years, she started to feel the joy that had been hidden under the layers of self-doubt. She took up painting again, a hobby she had abandoned when she had been too focused on appearances. In the quiet solitude of her small apartment, surrounded by blank canvases and a scattered array of paints, Maya found a new kind of peace. She could spend hours with a brush in her hand, letting her feelings flow freely on the canvas without worrying about whether it was perfect. Sometimes, she painted the vibrant colors of sunsets; other times, she painted abstract swirls that made no sense, but to her, they were beautiful. Painting became more than just a pastime, it was her therapy, her way of reconnecting with herself. It reminded her that beauty could be messy, chaotic, and imperfect, but that didn't make it any less meaningful. One afternoon, as she was working on a painting of a calm ocean, her old friend from the cafe, Sarah, called her. Sarah was one of the few people from her past who had seen her through all the changes, from the girl who was uncertain of herself to the woman who now had the courage to embrace who she was. "Maya." Sarah's voice rang out cheerfully through the phone. "I was thinking about you. How's everything going?" Maya smiled. "It's going great. Actually, I've started painting again." "Painting? That's amazing. I remember when you used to love it. You were so good. You know, I never thought you were anything but beautiful, even before all the changes. But now, I see this spark in you. You're more you than I've ever seen before." Maya paused for a moment, feeling the warmth of Sarah's words settle deep in her heart. "Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot. I think I'm finally getting back to who I was meant to be." After the call ended, Maya sat in front of her painting and realized something important. In the past, she had painted to escape. Now, she painted to express herself, who she really was, without fear or self-judgment. The process became a way to explore her emotions, her growth, and her new understanding of herself. As the months passed, Maya's life gradually fell into a new rhythm, one that felt more authentic and natural than anything she had experienced before. She no longer spent hours in front of the mirror, analyzing every detail of her appearance. She learned to embrace her imperfections, to see the beauty in the flaws that made her unique. She stopped hiding behind makeup, fancy clothes, and superficial trends. Instead, she found joy in simple things, like the feel of soft sunlight on her skin, the sound of birds chirping in the morning, and the warmth of her grandmother's hands when they held each other's. Maya's journey wasn't about changing her outer appearance or becoming someone else, it was about peeling back the layers of fear and insecurity she had built up over the years, and rediscovering who she truly was inside. She spent more time with people who valued her for her authenticity, her true self, flaws and all. And in return, she found that those relationships were deeper and more meaningful. One day, while walking through the park where she had once felt lost and disconnected, Maya noticed a group of children playing soccer. They were laughing, their faces full of joy and freedom. As she watched them, it hit her, they didn't care about what they looked like or whether they fit in. They were simply living in the moment, enjoying life for what it was. Maya smiled as she sat down on a nearby bench. She had spent so many years chasing after approval, trying to be something she wasn't. But now, she was finally learning how to live for herself, to find happiness in the little things, and to embrace imperfection. The path ahead wasn't always easy, and there would be days when the old fears crept back in. But now, Maya understood that those fears didn't define her. She was enough, just as she was, and the journey to reclaim her true self had only just begun. Maya's transformation wasn't just about self-acceptance, it was about love for herself, love for the people who truly saw her, and even love for the world around her. She had learned that love didn't come from the outside. It didn't come from compliments or validation. True love started within, and it was only when she learned to love herself that she could truly give love to others. One evening, Maya attended an art show where she had decided to display some of her paintings. She had never imagined that her work would be shown in public, let alone be appreciated by others. As she set up her display, she was nervous, but also excited. Her paintings, each one a reflection of her journey, were finally ready to be shared. As people walked around the gallery, Maya overheard some of their comments. "This piece is so raw," one person said. "I can feel the emotion in this painting." Her heart swelled with pride. She had created something that was truly her own, a piece of her soul, captured in every brushstroke. Later that evening, Maya bumped into a man named Ethan. He was quiet, thoughtful, and had a genuine warmth about him. They struck up a conversation about art, and soon, they found themselves talking about deeper topics, life, love, dreams. There was something about him that felt so easy, so comfortable. Unlike the people from her past who had only seen her for her appearance, Ethan seemed to understand her for who she really was. As the evening wore on, Maya realized that Ethan wasn't just drawn to her beauty. He was drawn to the person she had become, someone who had learned to embrace herself, flaws and all. For the first time in a long time, Maya realized that love wasn't about fitting a mold or becoming someone else. It was about being seen, being loved for who you truly were. Maya and Ethan began seeing each other more, but this time, Maya didn't feel the need to impress him. She didn't have to change anything about herself. Ethan accepted her for who she was, and Maya had learned to accept herself, too. Maya's life had come full circle. She had gone from a woman desperately trying to fit into a world that didn't value her true self, to a woman who had learned the power of self-love and acceptance. The road hadn't been easy, and there had been times when she felt lost and unsure. But through it all, Maya had discovered the most important lesson of all: she was enough. Now, As she stood at the edge of a new chapter in her life, she felt more alive than ever. She had found peace with who she was, and in doing so, had found the courage to live her life on her own terms. Her art had become an expression of her journey, a reminder that beauty wasn't in perfection, but in the honesty and authenticity of the person behind it. And her relationships, both with herself and others, had deepened in ways she had never imagined. As Maya looked ahead, she knew that the future was full of possibilities. She no longer needed to change to fit in or to be accepted. She had found the most powerful thing of all, the freedom to simply be. And in that freedom, she was finally able to live her life with joy, confidence, and the love she had always been searching for. Months passed since Maya had embraced her true self, and with each day, she felt stronger. Her art continued to grow, and she found herself making connections with people who appreciated her authenticity. But as she stepped into this new chapter of her life, a sense of uncertainty began to creep in. She had achieved so much, learned so many life lessons, but there was still a feeling that something was missing. One quiet afternoon, Maya sat by her window, sipping her tea as she gazed out at the city below. The world was bustling with activity, people rushing to work, children playing in the streets, and the sun shining down in the most beautiful golden light. She wondered what was next. She had found peace within herself, yes, but what else did the future hold? Was this where her story ended, or was there more to discover? Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Ethan, her steady support through everything she had been through. "Hey, Maya. I've been thinking about something. How would you feel about taking a trip? Just the two of us? I know things have been busy, but I think it might be good for us to get away for a bit. What do you say?" Maya smiled as she read his message. A trip. The idea of traveling, of stepping into the unknown, felt both exciting and a little scary. For so long, her life had been about playing it safe, about trying to fit into a box, to live up to expectations. But now, with everything she had learned, with the growth she had experienced, the unknown no longer felt so intimidating. It felt like a chance to continue her journey of self-discovery, one that would be even more meaningful with Ethan by her side. She quickly typed her response, "I'd love that. Let's do it." And just like that, Maya knew that the journey of embracing who she truly was would continue. There would be challenges ahead, of course, but she had learned that those challenges were just part of the process. The real journey was not about achieving a perfect destination, it was about living authentically, embracing the unknown, and allowing life to unfold on its own terms. As Ada's journey unfolded, she came to a powerful realization: true acceptance doesn't come from changing yourself to fit into someone else's world. It comes from accepting and loving who you are, even when it feels like the world is telling you to be someone else. Through her struggles and triumphs, Ada learned that real beauty lies in authenticity. She found that the more she embraced her true self, the more confident and empowered she became. No longer did she feel the need to fit into molds or wear masks. She understood that she was enough, just as she was, imperfections, quirks, and all. Her story is a reminder to all of us that we don't need to change for others to love us. The people who truly matter will accept us for the person we are, not for the person we pretend to be. And the most important love we can give is the love we show ourselves. Ada's transformation wasn't about the shape of her body or the way she dressed, it was about the shape of her heart. And when she finally started living authentically, she discovered something more beautiful than any magazine cover or social media post could ever offer: freedom. Thank you for reading Ada's journey. Remember, you are enough, just as you are. Keep being true to yourself, and the world will follow. I trust you enjoyed this video. Please like and share your thoughts in the comment section, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel for more alluring stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.